true stories
that make us say,
wow, God.
wow, God.
Wow, God.
God has brought me so far, and it was only because of prayer and fasting.
That is an absolute miracle. God is a great God.
So that miracle opened my eyes even wider than they had been for the reality that God exists and He's still involved in the miracle business today.
God is still in the business of doing miracles.
Hi, I'm Rob Vischer. Bodies, a song by Drowning Pool, still holds a special place in my heart. It's not a Christian song. It's kind of a ridiculous rap rock song from the early 2000s. But to me, and many other Christian guys my age, it's known as Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, the unofficial YouTube theme song for healing evangelist Benny Hinn. In the video, hundreds of people fall over as Benny Hinn pushes their foreheads, karate chops the air, or points in their general direction. All the while, the song plays, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor. Anyway, I went to a Benny Hinn crusade for my dad's birthday when I was 10 years old. Audience members went up on stage and claimed to have physical healings, just like in the videos. And yes, all of them ended up falling over when Benny Hinn so much as gestured in their direction. Maybe some people were really healed, I don't know. But after growing out of my televangelist phase of Christianity, whenever I hear a story of physical healing, I'm always skeptical. And in the online age, my skepticism has only grown. I think, is it AI? Is it clickbait? Is it attention seeking? When Christian recording artist Forrest Frank claimed he broke his back, got healed, then released a song that hit #1, my first thought honestly was, great marketing, Forrest. Just being honest. Anyway, if you're secretly skeptical of these kinds of claims too, it's okay. Lee Strobel, an award-winning journalist, was too. But after a lot of investigation, he found that some stories of physical healing just can't be denied.
One of the favorite miracles we talk about in our movie, The Case for Miracles, involves a woman who was blind for 12 years. She had an incurable condition called juvenile macular degeneration. Nobody gets cured of that. She went to a school for the blind. She learned how to read Braille. She walked with a white cane. And she ended up marrying a Baptist pastor. So one night, they're getting ready to go to bed. And she's in bed. He comes over and he puts his hand on her shoulder and he begins to cry. And he begins to pray. And he says, Lord, I know you can heal my wife. I know you can do it. And Lord, I pray you do it tonight. And with that, she opened her eyes to perfect eyesight. She saw her husband for the first time. She said, after years of darkness, all of a sudden, I could see perfectly. It's a miracle. And indeed, I think it is a miracle. Multiple medical researchers documented her case, and it's been published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. This is not just a story you read on the internet. It's not just something you hear whispered in the hallway of a church. This is a documented case. And by the way, her eyesight remained for the rest of her life. She lived more than another 50 years and continued to enjoy good eyesight. What do you do with that? What do you do? How do you account for the timing that it happens right after a prayer to Jesus? How do you account for the fact that you can comb the medical literature from A to Z and you won't find any other case of anybody being spontaneously healed of this otherwise incurable condition? So that miracle opened my eyes even wider than they had been toward the reality that God exists and He's still involved in the miracle business today.
After investigating this story, Lee knows it's 100% verified. But it's one thing to investigate somebody else's story, it's another to see it happen right in front of you. This is Christian recording artist Colton Dixon. Hello.
What's up, Wow God Stories? I'm Colton Dixon.
Sorry.
I've got a story for you. Sometimes you write songs and you don't fully grasp or understand or can fully appreciate the lyrics or the meaning because you haven't fully lived out that story yet. And this song called Miracles is one of those for me. So I wrote the song just before our twins were born. My wife and I, we've been married for almost 10 years now, which is crazy. That went by really fast. And we have 5-year-old identical twin girls. They were born in 2020. So we released Miracles at the top of 2020 and said hello to our girls in August of that same year. And my wife was just an absolute champ. Had, just was a beast. I don't know how else to say it. She's Wonder Woman. Had an incredible pregnancy and went a couple weeks past her due date even with twins, which is crazy. But we get to the hospital and everything's looking good and get some encouragement from the doctors and nurses there. And so we start the birthing process and a little over 30 hours later, the doctor finally goes, okay, things are not progressing the way that we had hoped. So I think that we need to pivot and go to a C-section. And we were ready to meet our girls at this point. So we were like, yes, let's do that. So they're in the operating room. They start the surgery, the process. And since the birthing process had already started for little Dior, the first baby out, her body had shut down, didn't know how to deal with being in the birth canal for so long. So when she came out, she did not have a pulse, wasn't breathing, the whole 9 yards. And even just from the countenance of the doctors and nurses in the room, there was a sense of urgency, that kind of kicked in, and it was like, okay, it's go time here. So they take Dior kind of to our left and immediately start trying to resuscitate her. So through CPR, through various methods, they're working on Dior. In the meantime, our other daughter, Athens, comes out kicking and screaming. So we knew she was okay. So we're like, okay, she's good. So let's just keep praying over Dior. So they're working on Dior. And man, it's every once in a while, I feel like life gives you an opportunity to practice what you preach. And my wife and I both grew up in church. And it's like instinctively, we just knew this is one of those moments. Do we give in to fear, which seemed like, almost like the more logical thing to do in the moment, what your average person would do? Or do we stand in faith? Do we believe that God is who he says he is? And he's not, he wasn't just a miracle working God. He is a miracle working God. So we started praying and speaking over little Dior right there in the operating room. And even just by seeing the faces and the countenance of the nurses and the doctors working on her, there all of a sudden was kind of like a sigh of relief. It's almost like no one was really like taking a breath. They're just so focused on this, this little baby. And then all of a sudden it was like, and I can't even remember if I heard the monitor, but it was almost kind of one of those moments. You see the heartbeat start on the monitor, like that kind of thing, that sigh of like, she's breathing, there's the pulse, she's back. And it was like, praise God. It was like in that moment, I knew things were going to be okay. Whether it was God directly reaching down and touching Dior or working through those doctors and nurses, I'm happy to report that Dior is happy, healthy. She's 5 now. You would never know anything was ever wrong there at the beginning. But there was that opportunity for me to walk out and live in these lyrics that I had just written about. It's like, man, God is still in the business of doing miracles. We have to come with faith. I believe that faith is the thing that precedes a miracle. And so whatever it is you're walking through, whatever it is you're believing for, just know it's our job, our responsibility. Even we have the authority to come boldly before the throne of God with faith. And then I think you'll be amazed to see what he does. So that's a wow moment for me. I would be excited and eager to hear what your wow moment is as well.
Colton's baby girl, Dior, came back to life. For Colton and his wife, her pulse coming back was one of the most exhilarating moments of their lives. But it's not quite a verified miracle. Life is a miracle, but it's not the type of miracle that will be written about in medical journals. It's awesome, but it's not the kind of thing medical people... It's awesome, but it's the kind of thing medical people see regularly. In our next story, Donna's condition was not something medical people see regularly.
Hi, I'm Donna Vanliere, and it's a great joy to be with you today. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my own journey of faith. About 13 years ago, I had come back from a trip, and I realized that my neck was really tight. And for some reason, it just kept bothering me. The muscles in my neck just kept bothering me in such a way that they never bothered me before. And it got to be so irritating. And it was probably 2 weeks after the trip. And my husband said, "Why do you keep doing that with your neck?" And because I was doing something, try to stretch it out. And I said, "I don't know. It's just really bothering me since I got back." And so he said, "Well, I don't know. It seems like you need to go to the doctor." And I went to the doctor, and my doctor took one look at me, and he said, "You know what? I got you set you up an appointment with a neurologist." And I went to see the neurologist, and he assessed me. And without a whole lot of small talk, he just said, "You have a brain disorder. We don't really know how it happens, but this is what it does. It sends conflicting signals to two opposing muscles at the same time. So it will tell two opposing muscles to fire up and work at the same time. For instance, it could tell the bicep and the tricep, both of you work at the same time." So in this case, it was affecting the muscles in my neck, and it was turning my head over my right shoulder to the point where eventually my head was stuck over my right shoulder and I couldn't move my neck. So at this appointment, the doctor said, we don't know exactly how to treat this, but we do know if we give you shots in the neck, it will kind of soften up those muscles, and that'll last for about 2 to 3 months. And then you'll come back in again and you can get the shots again. But you'll have to do this for the rest of your life. And at this time, my youngest is 5. So I've got small kids at home that I'm still running after, and I've got my head that's stuck over my shoulder. And prior to this, people would see me when I was out and about, or they would see me at church. We went to a large church at that time. And people would see me and they would ask me questions. They would say, "Donna, what is wrong with your neck? Were you in a car accident? Did you have a major fall or something? What happened?" And I would tell them what happened. I said, "Well, it's a brain disorder, been diagnosed with this brain disorder." And they would just kind of make noises in their throat. They go, oh, wow, yeah, huh. And then they'd say, "Well, I'm going to pray for you." And then they would walk away. And no one, and I know this is hard to believe, but it's true, no one prayed for me right there on the spot, even though they could see that my head was twisted over my right shoulder, that I was clearly disfigured in front of them, and no one would take the time to pray for me. But that was when I sat down with this neurologist. He did give me the shots in the neck, and he was going to give me 6, and I started to pass out after the 5th one. And at that point, he said, "Well, we'll just stop at 5 today, but be sure to set your appointment for 3 months from now, so for your next round of shots." And I thought, "You've got to be kidding me. I have to do this for the rest of my life?" And it was super expensive because insurance only paid for a very small portion of it. And I thought, how am I going to come up with, $1,200, $1,300 every month for the rest of my life? So it was a grieving period that I had to go through. And even though he did give me the shots, it took about 2 to 3 weeks for my muscles to start to relax, for my head to start to turn back a little bit. But again, in that time, I was walking around, people would see me, ask me all these questions. What happened? Were you in a car accident? Give me lots of advice. Have you tried this vitamin? You can buy this apparatus, hook it to your head, it can swing it, it'll pull your neck down, pull the muscles, on and on. I got all sorts of advice. But again, nobody was praying for me. And at one point, it was several months in, and I thought, I was just so sad. And I thought, "Lord, why aren't any of your people praying for me?" But as time went on, that's when I started to get mad. And I thought, "Lord, why aren't any of your people praying for me? Why are they looking at me, saying they're going to pray, and then they don't?" I just ended up just getting so frustrated by that. And I had already determined I'm not going back to the doctor. I cannot do shots every 3 months for the rest of my life. And so I thought, I'm going to take God at his word. So I started going into scripture again, turning to fasting. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to pray and fast that God will break this pain in my neck and that I'll be able to turn my head, get my head back on straight. And my husband said, well, how long are you going to fast for? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'm just going to start to fast. And I chose to do the Daniel fast, which was just pure fruit or pure vegetable. So I would have potatoes. I wouldn't have mashed potatoes because that had all the stuff in it. So I would just do a pure fruits, pure vegetables. And on some of those days, I would just go without it all and I just do a total fast. So that's what I would do. And I just kept going on and on and on that way, praying, seeking the Lord, fasting. And I would love to say that, wow, there were so many mountaintop experiences during that time of fasting and prayer. But there was a lot of valley time because my pain actually increased. It got worse. It was just really difficult to keep fasting. But I would say, okay, Lord, I'm going to keep fasting. I'm going to keep praying. I'm going to keep seeking your face for this pain to break, for my brain to be healed, for my head to go back on straight on my shoulders. And on day 32, I woke up and I was able to turn my head back to center and my pain was broken. And this is what I tell people. I am 97% healed. There's still that nagging little 3% that's in there that is still not totally healed. And to look at me, you wouldn't know that anything is wrong because my head is on straight on my body. But I can feel it. There's not a day that goes by that I still don't feel that something's a little bit off inside my brain and inside my neck. But God has brought me so far, and it was only because of prayer and fasting that I was able to get my head back on straight, because according to the medical community, I'd be having shots every 3 months for the rest of my life. But during that time, as I mentioned, no one prayed for me. Didn't matter if I was in a school hallway, a church hallway, in the grocery store, didn't matter where I was. People would stop me, they would ask, no one prayed. And it came time where it was definitely time for us to leave that particular church and try to find another church home. And when we started going to this new church home, we'd been there for a few months, and I went to the pastor's wife and I said, do you think I could start a women's prayer group? And she had already written it down. She'd written it down in the previous week. She wanted to start a women's prayer group. And so she said, yes, absolutely. So we started with, I think there was about 3 women, and we just kept building on from there. And then eventually, it was a few years ago, I went to the pastor and I said, do you think that we could offer opportunities for prayer inside the service? And so again, we started off with just a few couples. They would stay afterwards for a while. Well, that wasn't really working, the staying after service, because once the service is over, people have a tendency to leave. So we ended up, and we've been doing this for a long time now, and it's been working. During communion, we open every corner of the church because we have several couples that are placed around the church. And so during communion, people can come up and they can have prayer at that time. And we still have some couples who stay after the service as well for that additional prayer time. But I asked him if I could do that because I never wanted anyone to come into that church and feel the way that I did, to actually walk through a church, be physically disfigured, and have nobody pray for someone. And I thought, if you're going to church and people aren't praying for you, something's wrong, because you think I am going to get prayer when I go into a church service. So I really never wanted anybody to feel the way that I did. So I'm so grateful for my pastor at Conduit Church in Franklin, who allowed me to do that, to start this prayer ministry. And it continues to grow. We meet people one-on-one, they will come in for prayer and we'll meet them. Or if they have a deeper need, again, we will meet them. But we always just want to be totally accessible for that person who needs prayer. So it's just been a remarkable journey, but it never would have happened if people had not prayed for me. It's because they didn't pray for me that ended up bringing up that righteous anger that was being fueled inside of me. Man, it was just this anger that was welling up. And I thought, okay, this is wrong. People are not praying. This is totally wrong. People should be praying. And I don't want that to happen again to anybody else. I want to offer prayer. So I'm grateful for the journey because we've seen so many great things that have come out of the prayer ministry since beginning it at the church so many years ago.
Donna's rare, incurable condition developed in a way that doctors didn't understand. But in our next story, Lee Strobel investigated a teen who had a rare, incurable condition since birth.
One of my favorite stories about a documented miracle is one that got cut from our movie. I mean, at some point, you can't put everything in the movie, and this one ended up on the cutting room floor, and it disappointed me because it's a powerful, well-documented case of a medical healing that has no natural explanation. And it's a story about a guy named Chris. I've gotten to know Chris. He lives in Texas, and Chris was born with a paralyzed stomach. It's a condition called gastroparesis. And when you have a 100% paralyzed stomach at birth, it ain't going to be healed. I mean, that's your condition for life. Every time they tried to feed this infant, he would throw it up. He couldn't keep food down. So they had to install tubes in his abdomen so that food could be fed directly into his intestine. And he lived that way for the first 16 years of his life. He couldn't take in food and swallow it and digest it like a normal person would. He had to feed himself formula through these tubes in his abdomen. Well, he got to be the age of 16, and his parents one day took him to a church. And the pastor gets up and he tells a story of how God had healed him. And so Chris's parents brought up Chris to the pastor, and said, "Hey, would you pray that God would heal our son? He has this condition, it's incurable, and it's a bother to him. He can't have a normal life." And so the pastor put his hand on Chris's shoulder and began to pray. And Chris said, as soon as he began to pray, it was like an electric shock went through my body, like diagonally through my body, and instantly healed his paralyzed stomach. To the degree he knew it was healed immediately, he went out that day, and get this, he went to a Chinese restaurant and had his first meal where he's eating Asian food and enjoying it and tasting it and digesting it. He goes to the doctor. They say, "This is medically impossible, but you're perfectly normal. You've been healed." And they actually did the surgery to remove those tubes from his abdomen. And in fact, during our interview, he pulled up his shirt, and you could see the scars from where the surgeons had gone in and removed the tubes that he had been fed for those so many years. Now, this is a case, again, researched by multiple medical researchers and published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. It's a well-documented case. You know, to me, if four things are true, you can conclude that a miracle has taken place. Number one, do you have solid medical documentation? Number two, do you have testimony by multiple eyewitnesses who have no motive to deceive? Number three, is there no natural explanation of what took place? And number four, did it take place in the context of prayer? And we have those conditions here and in all these other cases that we talk about in our movie, The Case for Miracles.
Chris was born without the ability to consume anything. In our next story, Holly couldn't stop consuming things that would eventually kill her.
I was in prison when I had my first undeniable encounter with the person of Jesus Christ that was confirmed by his word. And I was serving a 12-year prison sentence. This was 5 years into my sentence. I went into my sentence believing that I was a Christian. I was, I would say, a cultural Christian. And thought I knew a lot about God. I was deluded. And when my oldest son in his 20s told me that he was not sure he believed God existed anymore, I decided that I needed to help him, and I was going to use the Bible to do it. And that's when I quickly discovered I did not know what I thought I knew. I decided to solve the problem by, I'll just read it. That lasted a week. That commitment lasted a week because it was boring and I didn't like it at all. I couldn't even make myself read it. So I put it back on my bookshelf and prayed very casually. This, in my mind at the time, this was not monumental in any way. God, if you want me to read it, you'll have to make me because I don't like it. And a few months went by. The prison went on a lockdown, which normally we're allowed out of our rooms all day and we go to work and school and things. But there can be emergencies where we're confined to our room for extended periods of time. And this was one of those times. It lasted for more than a week. And I had some books in my room, but I read them. And now all that was left again was this Bible. And I thought, oh, great. That's all I've got in here. But I decided to read it. And oddly, supernaturally, it was the most interesting book I had ever read. It was captivating. Time flew by. Pretty soon it was midnight. I had missed the meals. They delivered them to my door and I didn't even open my door to get them. And I fell asleep. And the next morning I woke up and was kind of like, what happened? What was that yesterday? And I determined I would read it again today and nothing supernatural would happen and I would know I just had an emotional moment or something. So I started reading it, and again, the most interesting book I have ever read. I was just enraptured in what I was reading. And so the third day that I woke up, I was a little frightened. What is happening here? Because I was 40 years old. I knew myself very well and what I liked to read and what I tried to read. And this was not me. There was nothing that I was doing here that was making this happen. It was, maybe if someone has experienced it, you'll know this felt like it was coming from outside of myself, an external influence. And I continued to read the Bible then every day for hours. I brought it to work. I brought it to meals. If I had to go to a doctor's appointment, I read it in the waiting room every day. And I've read it every day since. And my Bible fell apart. I taped it back together. It fell apart again. I got another Bible. I read it till it fell apart. Within a year, I'd read it cover to cover, 8-10 times. Just fell in love with God's word. I think true freedom can come at the point of ultimate confinement, even at a lockdown in a prison. At the age of 18, I was prescribed antidepressants, and over the course of the next 20-ish years, I was added antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, very high doses of all of these medications, and was quite debilitated. I couldn't even get out of bed, wasn't showering or brushing my teeth for months at a time, really in a poor state of health, mental health. After reading God's word and him giving me the ability to obey what I was reading in there, that obedience changed my life and healed me emotionally. And so after about 1.5 years of reading his word, I recognized that addictions I had were gone. I had been addicted to smoking cigarettes, and now I didn't even think about cigarettes anymore. That is an absolute miracle. I know for certain that having gone 6 months without a shower, years without brushing my teeth, unable to get out of bed, and that was while I was on all these medications meant to help me. And today I haven't taken any, and I'm stable, and I'm joyful. God is a great God.
Holly was healed from an addiction. And in our next story, investigative reporter Lee Strobel shares another story from his book, Seeing the Supernatural.
One of the cases of miracles that I personally helped investigate is one that absolutely blew my mind and increased my faith. It's a woman whose name was Barbara Comiskey. Her married name was Snyder later. And Barbara, as a teenager, came down with multiple sclerosis. She was diagnosed, we have the documents, diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic. And she deteriorated very quickly after that. Multiple hospitalizations, multiple surgeries. And after many years this way, she hadn't walked in 7 years. They got together with her parents and said, hey, there's nothing we can do. Let's put her in hospice. Next time she gets pneumonia, which she would get periodically, we're just going to let her die. We're only prolonging the inevitable. She's terminally ill. And so they put her in hospice in her home. She's in her bed. She's curled up like a pretzel. Rigidly, her fingers are curled so they're touching her wrists. Her feet are rigidly extended. She hadn't walked in 7 years, and so her legs had atrophied. She had a tube in her throat that was connected to oxygen canisters in the garage so she could breathe. One lung was collapsed. The other one was at 50%. She had lost control of her urination and bowels. She was virtually blind by then. She could see gray shapes. And she's waiting to die. Well, somebody said, hey, there's a Christian radio station here in Chicago called WMBI, the Moody Bible Institute. Let's tell them to pray for her. Let's put out the word. What can it hurt? And so they went on the radio station. They said, hey, would y'all pray for Barbara? She's on her deathbed. She's in hospice. She was described by her doctor as one of the most hopelessly ill patients he had ever seen. Would you pray for her? Well, we documented that at least 450 people began to pray for Barbara. How do we know? Because they sent letters saying, Barbara, I'm praying for you. Well, it came to Pentecost Sunday, and she had a couple of friends in her room where she was dying, curled up, and they were reading her some of the letters from people who had written in saying they're praying for her to try to encourage her. And in the middle of that, from the corner of the room where nobody was, Barbara heard the voice of God. And the voice said, my child, get up and walk. So she's stunned by this. So she rips the tube out from her throat so she could talk. And she says, hey, I don't know what you guys are going to think of this. God just told me to get up and walk. Go find my parents. I want them to be here for this. So they run off to get her parents, but she couldn't wait. She jumped out of bed. And I said, Barbara, what was that like when you jumped out of bed? She said, Lee, it was the funniest thing. First thing I noticed, my feet were flat on the floor. My feet had not been anything but rigidly extended for 7 years, and yet they were flat on the floor. Second thing I noticed, my hands had come uncurled. They had been rigidly, my fingers were touching my wrists, and they were, and then she said, she laughed, she said, the third thing I noticed, I could see. She said, you'd think that'd be the first thing I noticed. That was the third thing I noticed, that my eyesight had returned. She had been instantly healed, 100% of the effects of multiple sclerosis. Her lungs were inflated again. Get this, her mother comes into the room and falls down on her knees and grabs Barbara's calves and said, your muscle tone has come back. Her father comes in, they start to waltz around her bedroom. Well, it was Pentecost Sunday. And they said, let's go to church. They went to Wheaton Wesleyan Church in Wheaton, Illinois. Said, let's go to church to thank God what he has done. This is miraculous. So they show up at the church. The service had already started. And as they came in the back, the door of the church, the pastor was up front and he said, does anybody have any announcements? And Barbara starts walking down the center aisle. Nobody had seen Barbara out of a wheelchair for 7 years. The place erupts with people singing, Amazing Grace, I once was blind and now I see. The next day, Barbara goes to one of her doctors to be examined. And he said later, I saw her walking down the corridor toward my office, and my first thought was, oh, she died, and that's a ghost. Because he said, this is medically impossible. And it is. It's medically impossible. And yet it happened to sweet Barbara. She ended up marrying a pastor, and the rest of their lives, they ministered at a little Wesleyan church in Fredericksburg, Virginia, telling other people about the power of God. I hear that, and I met her, and this is years later. This healing happened in the 1980s, and I interviewed her just a few years ago, and to hear her tell it, she looks with this sense of awe and wonder as she describes what took place. And, usually I try to compensate people when I take their time and going to tell their story in a movie. I try to give them a check and a little something to thank them for their time and effort and so forth. She would not accept it. She said, no. God did this in my life. I can't take anything for this.
If you want to read about more verified miracles, pick up Lee Strobel's book, Seeing the Supernatural. I don't initially trust anybody's physical healing story, whether they're on stage with Benny Hinn or a Christian recording artist on YouTube. But I do trust Lee. He does thorough investigations into stories that are rooted in old school journalism. He's searching for truth, not just promoting a single or a certain worldview. When I see stories of physical healing verified by people like him, it makes me say, wow, God. And when I say wow, God, I mean the one true living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's the one who makes my heart say,
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
My wow God story.
I wanted to share a wow God moment.
That's my wow God story. Praise God.
And I'm so thankful to God for this wow God moment.
So, thank you, God.